The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
How do we know if we make the right decision? We're constantly making decisions. After you make a decision, how do you feel? There was a person a little while ago, he went to Eretz Yisrael a few years ago, and he got into a cab to go somewhere, and there was terrible traffic. And he looks at the Waze, and he sees that the Waze gave one time, but the way this driver was driving, they were getting there quicker. So he tells the taxi driver, he says, "No, you're a good taxi driver, you're beating the Waze." He says, "Yeah, sure." He says, "How do you know the streets so well?" So we know when you get into a taxi in Eretz Yisrael, it's not just a ride, it's an event, right? It tells you your name, and it'll explain to you why if the Prime Minister would listen to him, he can solve all the problems. He says, "Well, you want to know how I know the streets?" He says, I'm driving now a taxi for 6 months. He says, 6 months? 6 months, you know every little shortcut? He says, "Well, before I was a taxi driver, I was a police officer. And I was on patrol." He says, "You're driving, you're a police officer, now you're driving a taxi?" He says, "It's a long story." He says, "You want to hear it?" He goes, "Sure." He says, "Okay." He says, "I was a police officer for almost 29 years. One day, the radio crackles, there was a robbery in a monastery. Today, around Beit Shemesh, Baruch Hashem is being built up. There are a lot of mountains over there, all being built up. But on one of the mountains, there's a monastery. Unfortunately, it's still there. In this monastery, the monks who lived there supported themselves. Some of them, they were artists, they would do paintings, and they would sell it. Somebody broke in, stole their paintings, and they wanted to file a police report. So these two guys, he was me and my partner, we started to drive. It's a long ride up. As we're driving up, I realized I can't go inside a church. Okay, good, I have a partner. They pull up to the monastery, turns off the engine, and he's sitting there. So he turns to his partner and says, "Okay, go take the report." So the guy says, "I can't go inside, I'm Jewish." So I looked at him and said, "Hello, so am I." He says, "You got to go inside." He goes, "Look, I drove the car, you go inside." He said, "No, you drove the car, I'll stay and watch the car, you go inside." So you're arguing. Finally he turns to me and says, "Look, I'm a Kayan, I can't go in." So I said, I didn't know the difference. I wasn't such a big Talmud Chacham. I don't know the difference. The Kayan, no Yid can go in. He said, "Okay, you're a Kayan, fine, I'll go in." I take my papers, I go to the door, big monastery doors. I knock on the door, and sure enough, this monk answers the door. I said, "Hi, I'm here from the police station. I want to take a police report." "Oh, that's right. Please come to the side door." "Sure." Close the doors. I go to the side. I walk to the side, and I see this small doorway. As I'm walking to the small doorway, the door opens up, and there's the monk. He says, "Okay, come in," and he goes inside. So I start to walk inside. It's dark. I take out my flashlight. I start to go, and I bend down. I'm starting to walk inside. I'm walking for maybe 20 seconds, and all of a sudden I look. I see after the passageway there's a getchka. There's an idol over there. And I hop right away. What he wants me to do? To walk in? I said, "No, it's not happening." I immediately turned around and I walked out. The monk comes running out furious. "You disgraced idol. You turn your back to the idol." He starts yelling at me. I said, "What's the problem? I'll take the report now." He's yelling at me and he slams the door shut. I called the radio. I said, the guy said he's going to call in the report instead. A week later, the lieutenant calls me and he says, "I want you to know that they complained. The Vatican complained. The Vatican sent a letter registering an official complaint. They will not accept anything less than official apology from the State of Israel, and you have to be fired." And I was fired. They gave me 100,000 shekel for my 29 years of service, and I was fired. So now I'm driving a taxi. My partner, he's traveling the world, he has full pension, he's living the life, but I'm driving a taxi. He was quiet for a moment, and then he turned to the pastor and said, "I want you to know something. If I was faced with that same situation again, I would make the exact same decision again." At that point, the passenger said, he says, "I didn't know if I could be in a holier place sitting in that taxi or sitting inside Aron Kodesh. For someone to go through that and yet to say, I would do it all over again. That is someone who understands and accepts, who makes the right decisions." How good he felt afterwards, missing out on everything else, but he knew he made the right decision.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org